I had got hit by a car one time on Center Street playing tag, and everybody came in the house, you know, and was worried about me. Dr. Everett came to the house. The doctor came to your house in those days. He came to the house, and I was taking it all in. I was like, this is neat, because I'm the center of attention. So I'm going, oh, you know, going on like this. He comes in there and looks at me a little bit and checks me out. He said, get up off that couch. Ain't nothing wrong with you, boy. He slapped me on the butt and sent me outside to play. He knew I was over there playing Hollywood, so, but...
We stayed on Goat Island. We sang to Goat Island, which was probably not legal, but we'd get some catfish. They'd go in, with the flood, the ponds would fill up with fish, and we'd seine them. And they're going to die anyway. When it went down and then dried up, they'd just go into the ground. So, and we had mud battles in boats. And we'd throw mud at it, clods at each other in the river. And I remember Dr. Hudson's son, Eddie. He was like a snake. He'd crawl up under the banks in the old weeds and stuff. You wouldn't even know where they. And you'd come by and he'd just, how we could see was his eyeball. He'd come out there and lay them on you. And we got in a little island at the top of Goat Island, and it had weeds growing on it. And we pulled up. We'd grab a big handful of weeds, somebody trying to come on that island, we'd whop them over the head with those mud clods on the end of those weeds. So my brother, that ended that. The last time I went there, he had to go to Dr. Egbert because somebody hit him in the eye with mud, and he had to go down to Dr. Egbert's and have it taken out, and he went to his graduation with the patch over his eye.
Right at the foot of that mountain, there was a golf course. Mr. Mike Michaels, he was the proprietor of the golf course, and he was the mayor of Cramerton for a number of years. But when I was like 6 or 7 years old, we'd go down to the golf course and carrying people's golf bags up and down the hills, and 9 holes, and my pay would be 50 cents. And so I was so proud to get that 50 cents that I would take it home and show it to Mama.
I started Mayworth School in 1959. I went through those front doors at Mayworth, and my teacher was Miss Patrick in the first grade, and she taught my sisters, and she taught my mother as well. So that, I mean, that's a big connection to have that all the way through, because my mother was really my first teacher. And in the second grade, I love this story, but the teacher would, once a month, would pick who she thought was her best student that month and give them this big manila envelope and say, take this down to the bank. You know how to get there? Yeah. And then they'll hand you a piece of paper and you come back up. And so I mean, when it was my turn, I went, took that envelope down to the bank, and found out much later that we were delivering her paycheck to the bank for her. So, I mean, these were things that would never happen today.
Across was the depot. The biggest regret that I'm sure some people have. I don't know who decided to tear down the depot, but what a loss. And the depot, I'm looking at a picture of it, you can't see it. There was a dock, and on the dock concrete, and so it had some slope on it after a while, but on the dock out here, what we called at that time old guys. I guess I would be called that now. Old guys in bib overalls, because all old guys wore bib overalls, and ball caps, sat there with their legs dangling, and between them was a stenciled checkerboard, stenciled on the concrete, and I had a bottle cap in my pocket and I left it. And they played checkers with bottle caps. I'm sure there were Dr. Peppers and Pepsis.
My sister and I are 8 years apart. And so when she was in junior high school, I wasn't at school. I wasn't at school yet. So, her class would come out on the ball field for PE. And so the entrepreneur that I was, being as little as I was, I took my my little ballerina jewelry box and I put it on a TV tray, and I backed it up to the fence, and I sold lemonade to the kids out there doing their PE classes. Everybody loved it. They came and gave me like a nickel for a little cup of lemonade. So that was something I really remember about living next to the ball field.
We used to sneak up the mountain to the mansion. We would go up the back side of the mountain, like behind the mill down there at the Benny Cunningham Bridge. We would sneak up that mountain and go to the mansion, and sometimes we even went in the pool. But my luck, every time I went up, Mr. Deaton was the caretaker, and he would catch me every single time I went up that mountain. It was like he had radar or something. So he'd come in his pickup truck, you know, and he'd say, "All right, you gotta go, girl, you gotta go." The first time it scared me to death, you know, because I was afraid I was gonna go to jail. But he took us straight to his house. Their house was down right there where you can see the river and that little part of the golf course. And he took us to his house and told us to get out. There was 3 of us. And his wife served us Kool-Aid and cookies, you know.
Well, I was, things that were important to me, I was in the Boy Scouts. Joe Starrett was our scoutmaster, and it was important to me to be an Eagle Scout. And I worked hard at it, and the hardest part for me to become an Eagle Scout was you had to make what's called a fire by friction. And I was always a small guy, and that was a very difficult thing for me to do, but I finally got that done. And life-saving was difficult for me because I was a small guy, and you had to pull up like a 50-pound sandbag from the bottom of the pool, and I would get it almost to the top, and I couldn't get it any further. I'd drop it, but I was determined to get that sandbag up, and I finally got the thing up and got it to the side of the pool, and got the swimming merit badge.
But yeah, I will tell you about one event that happened with me and 2 other boys that was kind of scary, but we was a little mischievous a lot of times. Me and Darrell Watts, Tracy Turner, one night we just decided, well, let's just go climb the standpipe down there in Old Town. And what it was in Old Town, there was one of the big water towers down there. It was called the standpipe because it was cylindrical in nature. It was just a big tube of water that was one of the largest reservoirs around at the area at that time. So we decided, well, let's just climb the standpipe and see, you know, what we can do. We was trying to get in mischief a little bit, but we had a little bit of fun doing that. But we got halfway up. The guy in the middle, which was Darrell, he wanted to come back down. So I was on the bottom, and I would not let him come back down. So we climbed all the way to the top of that thing. And I'm telling you, that was one of the highest towers in the area at that time. And you could look out and see Charlotte, but Charlotte was not much of a city back then. You could just see a few of the big buildings over there, but somewhere in this world, if there's any metal left of that cylinder, my fingerprints are on there, because it was just a very scary situation, and I'm thankful to the good Lord that we made it back down.
Yeah, the river used to be a beautiful place. I remember that there were goats all along Old Town roads on our side of the riverbanks. But the river itself was free of debris and vegetation, and it was beautiful. It wasn't as muddy as it is today. And in the summer, it was filled with water lilies. Their fragrance, well, first of all, they were just magnificent. And then the fragrance, Old Town just was like a perfume factory. And then my father told me that before the river started to have vegetation, that it used to freeze over, and that people drove from one side to the other side in their cars.
I became a police chief at just barely 24 years old. So I was still, a kid, but I can tell a couple of stories about different things that have happened, and I don't have to name names. I lived on 8th Avenue right in the middle of town. Everybody knew where I lived. And there was a police car parked in my driveway every day. So I wasn't hard to find. And people would bring problems, issues to my front porch at various times. And one morning, about, I don't know, it must have been 2 or 3 o'clock one morning, I woke up to a car horn. Got up, walked over to the window, looked out the front window, and there's a car parked on my front steps with the horn blowing. And a guy strapped across the hood of the car, holding on for dear life. His wife, I guess they got in some sort of dispute. She decided she was leaving. And he said, "No, you're not leaving without me." So he jumped on the hood of the car, and she just delivered him. It's like, well, the police aren't going to get here fast enough. I'll just take him to David's house.
And then back of Woodlawn, down at about 381 Woodlawn, the men had built a horseshoe area, and they had the horseshoe stakes, and we would pitch horseshoes there, and always a lot of good friends there pitching. And also that was a good time to associate with people from other sections of the town. And the ones that I remember were the Garrisons from down in Riverside. And the 2 Garrison brothers would come up and pitch horseshoes. And it was just a gathering place. On Friday nights at the horseshoe section, they always had a fish fry for the neighborhood, and they would go over to Charlotte to buy the fish there where the gondola restaurant, there used to be a fish market right in there, and they'd buy the fresh fish on Friday, bring them back, and my daddy and a couple of men and a couple of women would fry the fish, and we had a community fish fry about every Friday night there.
Down in the Baltimore Cramerton, the schoolhouse, the old schoolhouse, like I say, it was like a recreation center, and they had something in the community like a flower club. It consisted of the ladies in Baltimore and stuff, and whenever people would be sick, they'd take them food, or a person would die, they'd would give them flowers and stuff like that. So, it was a good neighborhood in there where everybody looked out for each other.
And my best friend back in the days was Freddie Ferris. You know him as Fred Ferris nowadays, but we used to hang out together, and we'd go out in the woods and go fishing down at the South Fork River, and there was a creek there near my house. We spent many an hour in that creek catching crawfish and salamanders and stuff, and funny story. One time, it was a hot day, and we've been playing around that creek, and we decided we was probably in about the 7th grade. We decided we were going to get us a drink of water out of that creek. So we both went up this little waterfall coming over the rocks and stuck our hands in there, got a handful of water, drank some water. Started walking on up the creek and got up there about 50 yards or so, and there was a dead cat laying in the creek.
One particular lady I remember in town, she lived up on Woodlawn, Miss Cat Walker. A lot of people will probably know her. She was a widow lady, and part of my job was to canvass the town to see how things was going, see if there was any problems arising like drainage or water leaks or so forth. And I'd pass Ms. Walker's house, and she'd be sitting on the porch, and she'd see me coming, and she would just start motioning me, come here, come here. And she didn't call me Charles. She said, come here, Hastings, come here, I want to talk to you. And I'd pull up and say, yes, Ms. Walker, what you got to complain about today? And she would just laugh like everything. She said, well, I don't have no complaint, but she said, I just want to talk to you. She said, get out of that truck. And said, come over here and sit on the porch. And I said, well, I need to stay in the truck. You don't have to stay in the truck. Come on over here and sit down and talk to me.
There was a path from the house, which is less than 300 feet from here right now. We walked up the path. If we didn't go swimming first, we would gather with friends to watch folks swimming if we weren't swimming ourselves. That was probably mostly in the summer, obviously, but we would come on and sit around and talk more than anything. I mean, there's a couple times some of the other folks played spin the bottle down here, but I didn't participate in that too much. But had to put that in there. I mean, I think I might have kissed one or two, but I remember one. But it's in the stairwell closet down here now. But I don't know anybody else to tell you that.
I remember when I was a kid, and my dad, he woke us up because I could see that like downtown was very lit up. And we knew something was happening, and so we got in the car and drove downtown, and that was when Featherston's grocery store had caught on fire, and there was a big fire at Featherston's. And so we stood in the parking lot about where Floyd and Blackie's is right now, and we watched it, and it was so sad because Derek Featherston was a year ahead of me in school, and so I know their family, and so it was really sad to see that happen to the Featherston family. But I do remember when that happened. And then I think after that, downtown started to shift and change a little bit, because then some different businesses came in, and just it started looking different as the years went by from then.
But Troop 51, we met down at the Presbyterian Church right down the street. Mr. Smith, Reverend Smith, was he was the pastor of the church, and his son Stuart and Bowling were in our scout group there too. But Keith Young Sr. was our scoutmaster, and also Reed Jolliffe was assistant scoutmaster. And we just had the best time going up to Shield Scout Reservation up in Tryon, North Carolina during the summer, and spending a week up there and earning merit badges and having a lot of fun. We would go on hikes down to Mr. Young's place and all over the area here. We had a lot of fun. Went to Carrier Park over in Gastonia, which is a Jewish park over there, but we'd go over there and have a good time at festivals and things like that.
You weren't supposed to be on the mountain, and it snowed one year, 1960, the year I graduated, and it snowed every Wednesday for 4 or 5 weeks. And so we would get together and just go sled or do whatever, and we decided we'd slide on the mountain, and you weren't supposed to. So we went up on the mountain, and we had an overloaded car. And the police came, and we saw the light coming, and 2 or 3 of the boys were out, and they said, I was sitting in the front seat, and somebody said, get in the floor, Carolyn. And I said, why? And he said, we got too many people in this car. So I got in the floor and they threw their coats on me. So he wouldn't see me. And somebody got in the back seat, I can't remember who now, and we sat there and he talked to everybody. And then I was down under there so hot I thought I was going to die. And finally I just said, is he gone yet? And of course he was not. So he said, young lady, you can come out now. So I did. And everybody was so close. Did you know that I didn't live much more than a mile, a little over a mile from that place to my house? And by the time I got home, my mom and daddy already knew the story. So that was one thing, you didn't get by with anything.
My friend Larry Solon and I were good pals, and we were woodsmen. And we spent a lot of time in the woods, but all the boys, Rhett and Dillard and George Reese, we were all in the same class. We spent a lot of time in the woods, and especially on the river. And I speak of the river, that was the South Fork of the Catawba. If we weren't there, we were on Duhart Creek, which is on the opposite side of town.
When we lived on North Main Street, we had the river back behind, and I thought I would canoe with my child. We were both wearing life vests. I was the mayor at the time and put my boat in back behind the fire department and made it a very short distance before my child, who was 5 or 6 at the time, stood up, not understanding the lack of balance in a canoe, and we went upside down. And so the whole town is there. You feel like it's the whole town watching. There were so many people just watching me float. I couldn't get my canoe turned back upright. And then when I finally did, trying to get my child back in the canoe, it was very undignified. And people loved to tell that story for some time.
Well, going to school was very special because I could walk to school. My mother could watch me all the way across the railroad down the 8th Avenue to school or to church, either one. She could watch me every step of the way and know if I detoured from the path. But we always were blessed because we had such community here. And even on the hill above this building, we had movies on the Friday night. We would sit on the hill and they would show movies at the front of the field house here.
A number of years that my father, Frank McLean, worked here in Cramerton at Forbes Superette. As you know, Forbes Superette was up on the little hill, and that was one of the 2 grocery stores in Cramerton. There were lots of cars in this city, lots of people walking in this city. When I got my license at 16, my uncle had a little truck, and I drove my aunt over here one day to get groceries. And my daddy was so concerned that here I was driving up that hill to Forbes Superette, and he got out in the middle of the street and directed the Burlington traffic because traffic was just coming. He said, you can't go down this hill with all that traffic. So he got out and stopped the traffic for me to come down that hill at 2:30, because you didn't come to Cramerton if you didn't want to get in the traffic at 2 o'clock.
Oh, well, nothing like 3 of us came down here. We borrowed Mr. Reese's boat. He was locked up down on the river and had one of these railroad locks on it. You hit it hard and it'd come open. And then we took a 1/6 for oars and went over to Goat Island and chased the goats, played with the goats. Never caught one, but we played with the goats for several hours. And he came to me and says, Bill, the boat got gone. It's gone. I was scared to death. I couldn't swim, and I didn't know how to get out of there. He said, well, we'll walk across the other side and walk back around. And I said, okay. And I walked down, found the boat. And I jumped in that boat and would not get out of it until they'd get everybody Ray Stiles, myself, and my brother was the only ones over there at that time. And quite a few of the other boys would get over there and chase the goats just like we did. They had a ramp built over there, it's several feet high, and we'd get up on the ramp and jump off. And so the goats, when the river flooded, they'd have a place to go. So, yeah, we did that. I went hunting on the island. I shot a rabbit over there. Never will forget, I shot that rabbit. I went to get the rabbit, and there it was floating down the river.
I remember at Christmas, the mill always had a big party for the kids. They had a cowboy out that was on TV, Fred Kirby. He would come over to Cramerton and entertain the kids, and all the kids got gifts that the mill provided. That was always a big deal at Christmas time.
Now in the summertime, when it got so hot inside, they would move the projector and the screen to the outside of the school, and we would watch the movies out there. Tarzan, Hopalong Cassidy, and so on. And it was a place where it was Sunday school taught there. Reverend Barnett would teach Sunday school there. They had the ladies auxiliary committee would meet there, and they would quilt. They had a quilting. Ladies would get together and they would meet there and they would do their quilting there. So it was a recreation and a gathering place for the village people. I call it the village people. And on Christmas, I always look forward to this big day here because that was, we had that little black and white TV there with Fred Kirby of WBTV. Fred Kirby was the singing cowboy. And Calico, you could see him there on TV, but to have him to come over during Christmas, they would park the trailer, the horse, and Fred over on the mountain, Creamer Mountain Road, and he would ride that horse, and I thought he rode that horse all the way from Charlotte. Because we seen the cowboys on the TV, not the TV, that cowboy on the TV, and in the movie like Hopalong Cassidy, and guys like that. And so I had Fred Kirby up there with Hopalong Cassidy and Gene Autry and those guys. So I thought Fred Kirby had ridden his horse all the way from Charlotte, but he just parked over there and rode him in. He rode in there to the school, and oh man, Calico and Fred Kirby and Santa Claus, and we would have a big Christmas bash down there, and the kids would just, elated, to be in the presence of Santa Claus and Fred Kirby and Calico.
But my big memory of Woodlawn Avenue specifically, because if you've been there, it's a big hill. It comes down from a hill from down to the bottom near 13th Street. And every winter when it would snow, we had the best time sliding down that big hill on Woodlawn Avenue. So everybody had a sled. We'd go up and play on the circle at the top and throw snowballs, and then we'd come and slide down the hill all the way down to 13th Street. So it was a lot of fun for every kid in the neighborhood. Had a blast during snow season.
And to turn into Baltimore Village and go down the hill and around the curve, first thing I see is the schoolhouse. And I remember how we would go there on I think it was Tuesday or Wednesday. They would, the city would come over and they would play a movie for us, and we kids would come in there and sit down and watch a movie. I think it was on a Tuesday or Wednesday. Some of the older people would come and watch that movie, and it just reminds me where I came from. And at Christmas time, the gentleman that worked for Burleson Mill would give out tickets. If you had children that was a certain age, you get a ticket. And Mill would buy gifts and put them in a bag, and they had a show at the old schoolhouse. Fred Kirby and his horse Calico would come to that show every year and would sing for us, and then they would give us out these bags, and a lot of times these bags that they gave us was the only thing that we were able to get for Christmas.
The quilting bees that they would have at the teacherage, made from Cramerton cloth. That I can't remember how old I was really when I had something bought, from a department store, because my grandmother and my mother and my aunts all sewed, and we went to the cloth room that was about where Burger King is today, and picked out material, for a new dress and a pattern, but my grandmother was just so good she made her own patterns.
Yeah, one year we had a robbery at our bank, and just so I was just talking to this other chief, and when they called me, and just as I got there, they come out of the and went over towards Lakeview area, and I run them down, but I didn't get to keep them. They outrun me. They got away. So, and nobody ever found out who it was. Nobody knew who it was. You hope to say, I got them. It didn't happen that way.
Bank's middle of the morning, bank gets robbed. We've got this guy that lives on Washington Street named Sam Garrison. And Sam has, he's decided he's going to own bloodhounds. So he's got this bloodhound. Bank gets robbed. Somebody says, well, we need to get the bloodhound out here. Let's get the bloodhound. Go get Sam, see if he'll get the bloodhound. Butch Lay's working at the police department. When something like that happens, everybody comes in. It's an all call. Let's say everybody come in, the bank got robbed. We've got to go find these people. So Sam comes down to the bank. Butch, Lay, and Sam, they take off with the bloodhound. And the bloodhound goes up behind the bank, goes up the steps, up to Main Street, goes through the underpass, takes off down across the field out there where the apartments are now, the Hampton Meadows apartments are now. No houses on Cramer Mountain. The dog goes up the side of Cramer Mountain. The dog's traipsing all over Cramerton for 2.5 hours, looking hot on the trail of these bank robbers. Well, the bank robbers, they robbed the bank. They came up the steps on Main Street, walked out and got in a yellow Cadillac with a white vinyl top and took off out North Main Street. They'd been gone for 3 hours. But Butch and that dog and Sam spent 2.5 hours trying to track them down. They'd been long gone.
We had our 7th and 8th grade dance, and then we had our junior, senior, and the boys, some of the boys, let's see, Scott Bland and Donnie Fletcher and Mike Eckerd and Danny Graves made up a group. They played music. They wanted to try to imitate the Beatles, but they went out and they became pretty good. The boys did, and so we had some interesting times with dances in the field house.
We were practicing football one
year, and we always started about the middle of August, trying to, get your body in shape. And we were down there and we smelled smoke, and that was the day that the dairy barn burned down. And and I can't remember what year that was, but I know I was playing ball, but we just went ahead and practiced. And they said, "What's the smoke?" And they said, "Well, the barn's on fire, and they had a bull or a cow or something over there that got burned up," and that was the end of the dairy farm. So we never had it after that.
Mike Michaels lived behind us in the neighborhood, and he managed the golf course. He had a dog named Sparky, and Sparky, he was a hound dog, and he could talk. And I'm not kidding, he did. He talked. I would go sometimes in the afternoon up to the Lakewood Golf Clubhouse, and Sparky would be there, and Mike Michaels could make him talk, and he would say, "How are you, Sparky?" And he would say, "Sparky's hungry."
And the most thing about Cramerton was, Dixie, everybody was kin to each other. You wouldn't believe. You couldn't talk about anybody because they might be somebody's relative. And a lot of people came from the mountains down here, and so we had a variety of people that was brought into Cramerton that we're very fortunate, very fortunate.
I had the paper route in Old Town for the morning Charlotte Observer, and we would go down, and that loading ramp is where they left the papers, and so we would set up into the loading dock and either fold or roll the papers and get ready to go on the route. And usually during the time we were there, the Merita bread truck would come through going to service Featherston Supermarket, and we would negotiate with him and trade a newspaper for a couple of honey buns and make everybody happy. So
I can remember as a boy when they would occasionally they would have to pave the streets again for some reason. I don't know what the time frame was to when they had to do that, but we would get out there in our bare feet and that wet tar and have squashed up between our toes.
I never liked to fish, but Daddy did take me a time or two to fish underneath what is now the A. Benny Cunningham Bridge. There was a day and a time when that area, as you can see some of these pictures here in the Historical Society, was actually a lake. But I remember fishing. I never liked to handle the fish, so other than going fishing with my dad, I'd wear Playtex gloves to handle the worms and stuff, and I just never liked to fish. So I never got around the river too much there. Yeah. It was there. We had folks that go up and down there, paddle boats, build a wooden boat and float it.
4th of July was always a big time at the ball field. The mill would they'd bring a truckload of watermelons, and so they'd cut up the watermelons and everybody eat watermelons. And of course, watermelon fight would ensue after that. And then you go up to the pool where they would have contests and they'd throw coins at the pool. So you'd dive in and get the coins off the bottom of the pool. I don't think anybody would take a shower between the watermelon fight and the pool,
and of course, most of the kids my age, or in my age group or bracket, would probably mention Falls Cliff. It's out in the woods. If you go up Washington Street where it intersects with Brooklyn and turn right on Brooklyn, now there's some houses there, but there was like an old logging type trail, and you would walk down through there and go all the way to almost to the river, and on the left off of the trail a little ways was a very high embankment, and it wasn't really, I've gone back there as an adult, and it was not much of a cliff, but to a 10-year-old, it was formidable.
But on the 4th of July, they always had a big celebration, and of course, at the pool, races, and they threw coins in the water, and we dove for it, and then we'd go down to the ball field, and they would have watermelon, and then they'd have this chicken. I think it was a chicken, or maybe no, it had to be a rooster. I guess rooster's crow. Anyway, and people tried to catch it. Well, somehow it could fly. I think they were supposed to clip its wings or do something so it couldn't fly, but it flew and got away from everybody. And we lived down at the bottom of 10th Street, and that thing roosted in our yard, and every morning, cock-a-doodle-doo. So we always call that our it wasn't ours, but it would, our 4th of July rooster. But.
So basically, we started planning for our centennial celebration in 2013. I became chair of it. In 2015, we was able to invite all the Cramer families from Hollywood, California, Beverly Hills, Palm Springs, Martha Vineyard, West Palm Beach. And what was amazing to me, those Cramers never really knew each other. And they built new relationships, but also we built relationships back to this town. And they really enjoyed getting to know about their own history. And that and Richard Atkinson, Ted Reese, and a lot of other people were on that committee. But so we had an unbelievable, successful centennial. So we all got together, me, Ted, and Richard, and says, hey, we got the artifacts, we got stories, but we don't have a building or a museum. So let's create the Cramerton Historical Society. So all three of us was the founder to start that society and then work towards a museum. And it took us 3 or 4 years to secure this place we're in today.
And then one time there was an accident down at the ridge at the trestle, and a car went off in the river, and I remember that Catfish Henson and my dad took the cables and went down and hooked them to the front bumper of that car in the river, but I don't know who was in the car or what happened there, but there was no life taken in the accident.
Well, I'll share one quick story. A lot of people find this somewhat hard to believe. If you can find the pictures of the mansion that Stuart Cramer built at the top of Cramer Mountain, that house was occupied on and off when I was a kid, and a lot of the times that house was unoccupied. The mill company, of course, owned that property, but it was that was like an adventure also. So there was an old road that went up to the house, and so we would go there from time to time. A lot of times we spent a lot of times, but it was almost like visiting a haunted mansion, I guess, that was unoccupied, but the pool was still there. So and there was various times that the pool had been, that you could actually swim in it. So I actually got to swim in the pool there at Cramer, at the Cramer Mansion, or Maymont, as the proper name for it. But being able to do that and share that memory, I think is comical. People said, you really went up there, and yeah, we really went up there, but it was mostly a lot of us kids, and so we would go up there and kind of let ourselves it was like a playground. And so we also spent time camping there. The pond still exists there beside the clubhouse, that we camped beside that pond and actually gigged frogs, and I've eaten frog legs on Cramer Mountain by a campfire. And so people may find that hard to believe, but we did that a few times.
Wow, there's so many stories. The biggest one I think that comes to mind is going to my grandfather's house when I was little, and he would walk to the front. We called it the front, where Reese Hardware was, and he would get a moon pie and an RC. And then he would come back. But back then they wouldn't let the girls do that. So my brother got to go, but I didn't get to go. I had to stay home with my grandmother and play around the circle. But that's one big memory when I was little. And we would go out picking blackberries with friends, you know, out near where the baseball field was out there on that side.
July 4th was a spectacle in Cramerton as we grew up. Burlington Industries would actually bring carnival rides, games, hundreds of watermelons. They would throw money into the swimming pool. And July the 4th was just something that we loved, but we also respected our flag, and we would sing the Star Spangled Banner. And we were a community that loved America, so July 4th, the Day of Independence, was very special, and the community made it special, especially Burlington Industries. Never forget, they would have what you call a grease pole, and it was about 15 feet high, and they would attach a $20 bill to the top of it, and whoever could get up there would get that $20 bill. And you talking about a madhouse. July 4th, everybody's trying to get that $20 bill. But it's hard to climb a greasy pole. So whoever did that, we thought they were a hero.